Hey, this is the World Advice Channel too. What I want to talk about today is the question of the problem with living in a better world. Okay, so for this video, unlike my videos I tend to produce where I talk about black related issues and so on and so forth, I'm gonna do something a bit different for this video and talk about this specific issue, okay? Because you hear about it all the time, so on and so forth. What if we live in a better world? We need to live in a better world, and so on and so forth. And I'm kind of sick and tired of it, especially as you become older and wiser. Why it's kind of a bad idea, okay? Besides, in the future, I'm going to expand on different topics, so this is just something to kind of show that I'm going to expand into different topics. So, in other words, just a test run. Okay. So, now I mentioned that, let's get started. So, when it comes to the issue of what's wrong with living in a better world, the simple answer is the fact of what happens to the people who are not a part of it. Okay. So, that's exactly the problem with the question of living in a better world. Okay. As you can see, I got exactly straight to the point, and that is the truth of the matter when it comes to the problem with living in a better world. Because the problem with living in a better world in general, and everyone always talks about it, everyone thinks it's going to be this amazing place, there's going to be super huge buildings, flying cars. Yes, let's not forget about the flying cars, let's not forget about all these cool technologies and so on and so forth, and space travel will be such a fascinating, cool time. And even though, of course, that stuff is true, the biggest problem I kind of have with the idea of a better world, especially being Canadian, and trust me, especially if you lived here in Canada long enough before Justin Trudeau fucked everything up, you can get an idea of how exactly a better world would be like. Okay, like literally, Canada is especially back in it is as perfect as it can be. When you compare it to other nations that are considered the best it can be. First and foremost, unlike Scandinavia, it doesn't have the extreme degree of xenophobia. Unlike Japan, where even though it's peaceful, it doesn't have the extreme degree of course of having to work nonstop. It's actually compared to every other nation as perfect as you can get. Without having to work nonstop. It's comfortable. It's safe. Very little crime. The most dangerous areas in Canada you could like walk on like 10 minutes, and that's the truth of the matter. Okay, so if anyone would know how a better world would be like, it would be me. Okay, and when it comes to that particular topic of course, be from my experience in Canada, I can tell you something. Just because you live in a place that's um actually it seems that it's perfect and there's no problems and there's not and if there's problems there's not any major issues, I can tell you it still doesn't mean everything's good as it is. Okay, because the biggest problem I have with this whole living in a better world, and I'll get expand further on my point from my experience living in Canada, is everyone thinks it's going to be a world not just cool, but it's going to be everyone's going to be having a great time and this and that. But as we all know, anyone who's truly wiser and is alert to the world we live in, how does that even work though, for that matter? Okay, because aside from when you get past the other issues, like for example the fact that of course we live in a world where if every nation is developed, which in other words is pretty much the idea of living in a better world where literally all nations, if not most nations, are developed. Okay, the truth of the matter is, would that make it more likely that not only we run out of resources, but the moment like a small conflict happens, we have to worry about like a nuclear Armageddon? But anyway, aside from those pointers to those points for that matter, okay, the biggest problem with the idea of living in a better world, okay, aside from that, which is something that people tend to overlook because everyone says, oh, the world's going to be so great and this and that, is what happens to the people who are left out of it. And this is the biggest problem I have with the issue of living in a better world. A better world. Oh, everything's perfect, this and that, and this and that, and everything goes well, every place is developed, everyone has this. What happens to the people who are left out of things? Okay? And this is the philosophical issue with the idea of a better world. Okay, I'm not saying we shouldn't have a better world, but this is more like like just explaining the philosophical issue with it. Okay, because the thing about the world we live in today, okay, even though the world we live in today is chaotic, it has a lot of problems, it has a lot of issues, a lot of pain and suffering. The thing about it is that at least when you live in a world like the world we live in today, you can always say, okay, I have it bad, but at least I know I don't have it that bad, like that person over there or that other person over there. Okay, so even though of course it's not saying you enjoy seeing them suffering, it makes you feel a sense of relief. Oh my God, I'm not the only one in the world who has it bad. But when you actually, of course, live in a world where it's perfect and it's pretty much just a giant Canada. The whole world's like a Canada for that matter, okay? Of course, even though there's people suffering, the fact that everyone and the majority of people in the world are happy and are doing good, it gives this illusion that like when you have your issues and you're having your problems, that everyone in the world is happier than you are. And that freaking sucks though, for that matter, okay? To think that we're living in a world where everyone is happier than you are. And that's exactly what I'm trying to get across here, to be quite blunt and honest with you, okay? It gives off that feeling. And to live in a society where, where sometimes people might not be smart enough or have the ability to become famous or this and that, or just had to run into just really shitty people and so on and so forth, or narcissistic older brothers and older sisters. Oh Lord, God bless the ones who've had old narcissistic older sisters. I've heard horrible things about those people. Like just in general, you just had bad situations that have kind of gone your way. The truth of the matter is, for that matter, to be quite honest with you, when it comes to that particular issue, for that matter, okay, if you have had those issues kind of hinder in your way of success, or even just a miserable older father or older mother who doesn't really let you do anything, and now you have to go in the real world and you're miserable as fuck, like how do you, like, I can't imagine how miserable someone would feel, okay? And that's the biggest problem I have with this whole idea about let's live in a better world, let's live in a better world, because I just want people to realize though, just because we live a society is full of peace and so on and so forth doesn't still mean it cannot be cruel. In some ways, I think it's even more cruel than societies during times of war. Because during times of war, it's a case of okay, it's a case of everyone's suffering, or at least a good portion, if not most people, are suffering. So it's a case of I know I have it bad, but I know I don't have it this bad, you know. And you can always pretty much just learn how to fight, and it's more simple when it comes to resolving situations. But during times of peace, it just you're just kind of miserable and you don't really have anything to do. And there's people who say the worst things to you and the most messed up things to you. And it's like, what am I going to do? Punch her in the face and then I have to deal with getting in trouble with the police? Like, it's depressing as fuck, in all honesty, to put it bluntly. And that's exactly the truth of the matter when I hear about those topics. I don't have any interest whatsoever in this idea, or I should say, just logically speaking, I don't know why we want to live in a better world. Because what happens to the people who are left out of it? There's already enough people who are really good at making you feel like the whole world is doing better than you. And most anyone who's had a misfortune of meeting a narcissist, they'll always say the same thing. Like 99% of the world's doing better than you're doing, which is of course stupid and exaggeration. There's a lot of people doing bad in the world, but now in an actual world where it's actually, of course, you know, a so-called perfect world, um, then it actually comes off that way, and it might actually be that way, and that sucks. I can't imagine how miserable people could be. And back to what I was saying before about Canada, I'm gonna tell you something about Canada, man. Especially living in Canada, okay? On the real though, especially living in Ontario, a more well-to part of Canada, man. I'm gonna tell y'all something, man. From what I know, from people I've heard, and so on and so forth, just in general, I've been around. When you live here in Canada, especially back in the days before things got as crappy as they did now, because of course of Justin Trudeau, if you had it bad and it felt like hell, okay? Like absolute hell. Because you would always walk across the street or just look at people who are doing well, look at yourself and say, "Oh my God, why does it seem like everyone is doing so much better than me?" And unlike America, where you can just walk across the street, it seems you start wondering that for a second. Oh, is everyone in the world doing better than me? And you see like this homeless person on the street who's asking for money, and that's the thing that I'm trying to get across here. And this is the problem with this is the truth about being Canadian. When it comes to a better world, that's exactly what Canada, a better world would be like. A world with little crime, with a bunch of services for all of your issues, and so on and so forth. And that's what I'm trying to say, man. And when you live in a country like Canada, if you're not doing well, it actually does really suck, and it really does feel like the whole world's doing better than you. And that's something I will tell you, and that's why you have to be careful of what you wish for, okay? And that's the truth of the matter. So anyway, this is my video. This is all I have to say. I hope you enjoyed it and found it informative for this video. And just remember, if you like this video and videos like this, remember some of this video up and hit the subscribe button. And this is all I have to say. And simply put, I'm out. Bye.